What you're about to hear is a story that will make you question everything you think you know about the people closest to you. This isn't just about a crime. It's about the masks we wear, the lies we tell ourselves, and the moment when everything we believe turns out to be a carefully constructed illusion. Before we begin, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop your location in the comments. Let me know where you're watching from.
This is CrimeAtlas. Thank you for joining us today. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, subscribe, and turn on your post notifications.
Now let's dive in. The graduation ceremony at Westfield High School in suburban Minneapolis took place on a perfect June afternoon in 2014. The sun was shining, families were cheering, and among the sea of navy blue caps and gowns, one student stood out from all the rest. Her name was Sarah Chun, and she was everything a parent could dream of having in a daughter. At 18 years old, Sarah had just been named valedictorian of her graduating class of 487 students. She had a perfect 4.0 GPA that she had maintained since freshman year. She was captain of the debate team, president of the National Honor Society, and a volunteer tutor at the local community center every Saturday morning without fail. But what made Sarah truly special, what made teachers and counselors and neighbors talk about her with genuine admiration, was something deeper than her accomplishments. Sarah Chun was kind, not the performative kindness that teenagers sometimes display when adults are watching. Real kindness, the kind that made lonely kids feel seen, the kind that made struggling classmates feel capable, the kind that made her parents, Michael and Linda Chun, believe they had done everything right. As Sarah walked across that stage to accept her diploma and deliver her valedictorian speech, her parents sat in the third row with tears streaming down their faces. They had come to America from Taiwan 30 years earlier with nothing but 2 suitcases and a dream. They had worked brutal hours, Michael as a software engineer and Linda as a pediatric nurse, to give their only daughter opportunities they never had. And Sarah had repaid their sacrifice with perfection. "Thank you, Mom and Dad," Sarah said from the podium, her voice clear and strong. "Everything I am, everything I've accomplished, I owe to you. You taught me that hard work and integrity are the foundation of a meaningful life. I promise to make you proud every single day." The audience erupted in applause. Linda Chin gripped her husband's hand so tightly that her knuckles turned white. This was the moment they had worked their entire lives for. This was proof that the American dream was real. If only they had known that the daughter they were applauding was not the person they thought she was. If only they had seen what was hidden beneath that perfect smile and those perfect grades. If only they had asked the right questions before it was too late. But they didn't know. Nobody did. And that was exactly how Sarah wanted it. Sarah Chin's childhood had been carefully orchestrated from the very beginning. Michael and Linda were not strict parents in the traditional sense. They didn't yell or punish harshly. They simply had expectations, and those expectations were communicated in ways that were somehow more powerful than any raised voice. "We just want you to do your best," Linda would say whenever Sarah brought home a test or a report card. But your best was understood to mean perfect. Anything less than an A was met with concerned looks and gentle questions about what had gone wrong, what could be improved, how they could help Sarah reach her potential. By the time Sarah was 10 years old, she had learned to read the subtle signals of her parents' disappointment. The slight downer of her father's mouth when she came in second place at the science fair. The way her mother's smile didn't quite reach her eyes when Sarah admitted she had missed a question on a math quiz. The message was clear. Being good was not enough. Sarah had to be the best. So she became the best. She studied while other kids played. She practiced while others relaxed. She volunteered and joined clubs and collected achievements like other teenagers collected shoes or video games. And with each success, her parents' approval grew warmer, their pride more evident. But there was a problem that nobody saw, not even Sarah herself at first. She wasn't actually enjoying any of it. The studying felt like suffocation. The achievements felt hollow. The praise from her parents made her feel trapped rather than validated. By the time she reached high school, Sarah Chun had developed something that psychologists would later describe as achievement addiction coupled with profound identity suppression. She had become so skilled at being what everyone wanted her to be that she had lost touch with who she actually was underneath it all. She was a shell, a performance, a carefully maintained illusion. And she was exhausted. During her sophomore year, something shifted inside Sarah. It started small, almost imperceptible. She was sitting in AP chemistry, listening to Mr. Patterson drone on about molecular structures, when a thought crossed her mind that she had never allowed herself to think before. I don't care about any of this. The thought was so shocking, so fundamentally at odds with everything she had built her life around, that she actually gasped out loud. Mr. Patterson paused mid-sentence and looked at her with concern. "Everything okay, Sarah?" "Yes, sir," she said automatically, her perfect student mask sliding effortlessly back into place. "Just understood something suddenly. Please continue." But something had cracked inside her that day. A tiny fissure in the perfect facade she had maintained for so long. And once a crack appears, it's only a matter of time before the whole structure begins to crumble. Sarah started having a recurring dream around this time. In the dream, she was standing on a stage in front of an enormous audience. Everyone was applauding, cheering for her, telling her how wonderful she was. But when she looked down at herself, she realized she was completely transparent. She was made of glass, and everyone could see right through her to the emptiness inside. She would wake from these dreams with her heart racing and her sheets soaked with sweat. The girl who would change everything walked into Sarah's life on the first day of junior year. Her name was Amber Reeves, and she was everything Sarah was not. Amber had transferred from a school in California, and she brought with her an energy that felt almost dangerous in the carefully controlled environment of Westfield High. She had dyed streak in her dark hair that changed colors every few weeks. She wore clothes that pushed the boundaries of the dress code. She laughed too loudly in the hallways and didn't seem to care what anyone thought about her. She was, in other words, completely free. Sarah couldn't stop watching her. It wasn't attraction exactly, though there was something magnetic about Amber's confidence. It was more like watching a different species, a creature that operated by rules Sarah didn't understand, but desperately wanted to learn. They were assigned as lab partners in AP biology, and Sarah's first impression was that Amber would be a terrible student who would drag down her grade. She was wrong about that. Amber was brilliant, possibly even smarter than Sarah, but she wore her intelligence casually, like it was no big deal. "You don't have to be so intense about everything," Amber said one day as Sarah was triple-checking their lab report. "It's literally perfect already. You know that, right? I just want to make sure that it's flawless." "I know. But here's a secret, Sarah-chun. Perfection is boring. Perfection is safe. Perfection is a cage." Sarah stared at her, unsure how to respond. No one had ever talked to her like this before. Amber smiled, not unkindly. "I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm just saying, you look exhausted. When's the last time you did something just because you wanted to? Not because it would look good on a college application or make your parents proud. Just because it made you feel alive." Sarah opened her mouth to respond and realized she had no answer. She literally could not remember a single time in the past 5 years when she had done something purely for herself. "That's what I thought," Amber said quietly. "Come hang out with me this weekend. No agenda, no goals, no achievements to unlock. Just exist for a few hours. See what it feels like." Sarah knew she should say no. She had SAT prep on Saturday mornings, volunteer tutoring in the afternoon, and 3 college essays to work on. But something in Amber's eyes, something in the way she talked about freedom and being alive, made Sarah say something she almost never said. "Okay." That single word, that one small agreement, set in motion a chain of events that would destroy multiple lives and reveal secrets that should have stayed buried forever. The friendship that developed between Sarah and Amber over the following months was unlike anything Sarah had experienced before. Amber introduced her to a world beyond achievements and expectations. They went to concerts in dingy venues downtown. They drove to Minneapolis after midnight just to get pancakes at 24-hour diners. They talked about philosophy and music and what it meant to be authentic in a world that constantly demanded performance. For the first time in her life, Sarah felt like someone actually saw her. Not the perfect student, not the golden daughter, but the real person underneath. The person who was scared and angry and tired of carrying the weight of everyone's expectations. Your parents sound intense, Amber said one night as they sat on the hood of her beat-up Honda Civic, looking at the stars. They just want what's best for me, Sarah said automatically. The defense mechanism she had perfected over years. That's what they tell themselves, Amber replied. But what they actually want is for you to fulfill their dreams. That's not the same thing as wanting what's best for you. Those are two completely different things. Sarah wanted to argue, but she couldn't, because Amber was right. Her parents had never once asked her what she wanted. They had simply assumed that what they wanted for her was what she should want for herself. So what do you want? Amber asked. If you could do anything, be anyone, what would you choose? Sarah thought about it for a long time. The honest answer was terrifying. I don't know. I've been who they needed me to be for so long that I don't know who I actually am. Then maybe it's time to find out. Sarah's grades remained perfect. Her attendance remained flawless. To the outside world, nothing had changed. But inside, Sarah Chun was beginning to unravel. The exhaustion she had been suppressing for years was catching up with her. The resentment she had never allowed herself to feel was bubbling to the surface. She started having headaches that wouldn't go away. She stopped sleeping well. She would sit at her desk, staring at homework that used to be easy, and feel absolutely nothing. No motivation, no interest, no connection to the person who had cared about these things just months before. Her mother noticed something was off. Are you feeling okay, sweetheart? You seem tired. I'm fine, Sarah lied. Just busy with college applications. Linda studied her daughter's face for a moment, and Sarah held her breath, wondering if this would be the moment when her mother actually saw through the mask. But then Linda smiled and nodded. I'm so proud of you. Stanford is lucky to have you. Sarah had been accepted to Stanford through early admission, her parents' dream school. She was supposed to be ecstatic. Instead, she felt like she was being led toward a prison sentence. Thanks, Mom, she said, her smile perfect and empty. That night, Sarah made a decision. She needed to do something for herself, something her parents would never approve of, something that proved she had autonomy over her own life. She picked up her phone and sent a text to Amber. I want to do something crazy, something my parents would hate. Help me figure out what. Amber's response came immediately. Finally, come over tomorrow. I have ideas. Sarah stared at her phone, her heart pounding. She had no idea what she was about to unleash. She had no idea that this single decision, this desperate grab for freedom, would lead to consequences she couldn't possibly imagine. All she knew was that she couldn't keep living the way she had been. Something had to change, even if that change was dangerous. What Sarah didn't know, what nobody could have known at that moment, was that Amber Reeves had her own secrets. Secrets that would collide with Sarah's desperation in ways that would leave multiple people dead and 2 families destroyed forever. If you're still watching, type, I'm here in the comments. Because what happens next will change everything you think you know about this story. Don't go anywhere. The basement of Amber Reeves' house was nothing like the rest of the home. Upstairs, everything was neat and suburban, the kind of place that could be featured in a home decor magazine. But the basement belonged to Amber completely, and it reflected a side of her that most people at Westfield High never saw. The walls were covered in artwork, some of it beautiful, some of it disturbing. Paintings of faces with too many eyes. Sketches of hands reaching out of darkness. Photography prints of abandoned buildings and empty streets at 3 in the morning. In the corner sat an expensive camera setup, professional editing equipment, and a laptop covered in stickers that said things like "Question everything" and "Normal is a myth." Sarah had been to Amber's basement dozens of times since they became friends, but this visit felt different. There was an energy in the air, a sense that something significant was about to happen. So you want to do something crazy, Amber said, gesturing for Sarah to sit on the worn leather couch. Define crazy. Are we talking get a tattoo your parents will hate, crazy, or completely reinvent yourself crazy? Sarah thought about it. A few months ago, even getting her ears pierced would have felt rebellious. But now, after months of Amber's influence, after months of recognizing how much of her life had been performance, she wanted something bigger. I want to be someone else, Sarah said quietly. Not forever. Just, I want to know what it feels like to be a completely different person. To make choices that have nothing to do with being perfect or being the golden daughter. I want to disappear for a while. Amber's eyes lit up with an intensity that should have been a warning sign. I can help with that. She pulled out her laptop and opened a folder labeled Projects. Inside were dozens of photos that made Sarah's breath catch. They were pictures of Amber, but transformed. In some, she was blonde and wearing business clothes, looking like a corporate executive. In others, she had dark lipstick and vintage clothing, looking like she had stepped out of the 1940s. Each photo showed a completely different person. I do this thing, Amber explained. I call it identity tourism. I create a fake identity, complete with backstory, and I live as that person for a day or a weekend. I go to cities where nobody knows me, and I just become someone else. It's addictive. The freedom of it. Sarah stared at the images, fascinated and frightened. Is this legal? Technically, as long as you're not committing fraud or using a real person's identity. It's just role play. Harmless fun. Think of it like an extended improv exercise. Have you ever gotten caught? Amber laughed. Caught doing what? Being weird. Sarah, people see what they expect to see. If you walk into a coffee shop dressed like a businesswoman and act like a businesswoman, people assume you're a businesswoman. Nobody questions it. Nobody looks deeper. We're all just playing roles anyway. I just do it more consciously. Sarah knew this was probably a bad idea, but the thought of being someone else, even temporarily, was intoxicating. For one day, she could make choices that had nothing to do with her parents' expectations or her perfect record. She could be messy, imperfect, free. What would I do? Where would I go? Amber grinned like she had been waiting for this question. I've been planning something bigger, something that requires two people. Are you in? Tell me what it is first. Where's the fun in that? Here's what I'll tell you. We're going to Minneapolis for the weekend. We're going to become completely different people. And we're going to do something that will make you feel more alive than you've ever felt in your perfectly planned life. Trust me, Sarah should have asked more questions. She should have demanded details. She should have recognized the manic energy in Amber's eyes as something dangerous. But she was 17 years old, exhausted from years of perfection, and desperate to feel anything other than the suffocating pressure of expectations. I'm in, Sarah said. Good. This weekend. Tell your parents you're staying at my house for a study session. I'll tell my mom we're at your place. And Sarah. Amber's smile widened. Bring clothes you've never worn before. The person you're going to be doesn't dress like a straight-A student. Sarah spent the week preparing for the weekend with a mixture of excitement and dread. She told her parents exactly what Amber had suggested, that she would be staying at Amber's house for an intensive study session. They believed her without question because Sarah had never given them a reason not to trust her. Don't work too hard, her mother said as Sarah packed a bag on Friday evening. Even you need rest sometimes. I'll be fine, Mom, Sarah said, guilt twisting in her stomach. This was the first real lie she had ever told her parents. Everything else had been omission or misdirection. This was different. She arrived at Amber's house at 6 o'clock. Amber's mother, a perpetually distracted woman who worked from home as a graphic designer, barely looked up from her computer. Have fun at Sarah's house, honey, she called out as they headed for the door. Will do, Amber replied with a wink at Sarah. They drove to Minneapolis in Amber's Honda, music blasting, and with each mile that passed, Sarah felt the weight of her regular life lifting slightly. By the time they reached the city limits, she was almost giddy with the transgression of it all. Amber had booked them a room at a budget hotel near downtown using cash and a fake name. No digital trail, she explained. That's the key to doing this right. You want to be untraceable. The hotel room was nothing special, 2 double beds and a bathroom that had seen better days. But to Sarah, it felt like the most exciting place she had ever been. This was freedom. This was autonomy. This was choosing something for herself. Okay, Amber said, dropping her bag and immediately pulling out clothes. Time for transformations. I brought options for both of us. For the next 2 hours, they experimented with different looks. Amber had brought makeup, wigs, clothing in various styles. She transformed Sarah from a fresh-faced honor student into someone completely different. Dark lipstick, smoky eye makeup, a leather jacket she would never wear in real life, boots with heels that made her walk differently. When Sarah looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The person staring back at her looked confident, dangerous, free. Who am I? Sarah asked. Tonight, you're Cassie. You're 22, you work as a bartender, you're in the city visiting friends, and you don't care what anyone thinks about you. Cassie makes bad decisions and doesn't apologize for them. Cassie lives in the moment. Sarah nodded slowly. And who are you? I'm Morgan. I'm a freelance photographer. I'm documenting the nightlife scene for a magazine that doesn't exist. And I'm always looking for interesting people to photograph. They went to a club in downtown Minneapolis, the kind of place Sarah's parents would be horrified to know existed. The bass was loud enough to feel in her chest. The lights were strobing and disorienting. Everyone around them was in their 20s, and nobody questioned that Cassie and Morgan belonged there. For 3 hours, Sarah danced and laughed and talked to strangers using her fake identity. It was exhilarating. Every time someone asked her name and she said, Cassie, it felt like shedding another layer of the prison she had been living in. She felt light, unburdened, genuinely happy for the first time in years. Around midnight, Amber pulled her aside. There's someone I want you to meet. She led Sarah through the crowd to a corner booth where a young man sat alone, nursing a drink. He was attractive in a rough way, probably in his mid-20s, with tattoos visible on his forearms and an expression that suggested he was used to being approached. This is Marcus, Amber said. Marcus, this is Cassie. Marcus looked Sarah up and down with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. Amber's told me about you. Sarah's stomach dropped. Wait, you two know each other? Old friends, Amber said smoothly. Marcus helps me with my photography projects sometimes. He's good at finding interesting locations. Something about this felt wrong. Sarah looked at Amber, trying to read her expression, but Amber's face was neutral. I should probably, Sarah started. Stay for one drink. Marcus interrupted. Amber says you're looking for an adventure. I might have something that would interest you. Who wasn't afraid? Marcus smiled, and there was something predatory in it. The kind that people like you never forget. What Sarah didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that Marcus Delgado was not just some random person Amber knew casually. He was someone she had met 3 months earlier through a dark web forum, someone who shared her fascination with pushing boundaries and breaking rules. Marcus was 26 years old and had a criminal record that included theft, drug possession, and assault. He was charming when he wanted to be, intelligent enough to be dangerous, and completely without conscience when it came to getting what he wanted. And what Marcus wanted, what he had been planning for weeks with Amber's help, was something that would change everyone's lives forever. But Sarah didn't know any of this yet. All she knew was that she had come to Minneapolis to be someone different, and now she was sitting in a club with 2 people who seemed to offer exactly that transformation. Here's the deal, Marcus said, leaning forward so Sarah could hear him over the music. There's a house in the suburbs. Rich family, away for the weekend. Security system that's laughably easy to bypass. I've been watching it for weeks. There's valuable stuff inside, but more importantly, there's something that belongs to me. Something that was stolen from me 6 months ago. Sarah's eyes widened. You're talking about breaking into someone's house. I'm talking about taking back what's mine, Marcus corrected. The family who lives there, the Kensington family, they're not good people. Trust me on this. They deserve what's coming. Sarah looked at Amber. Is this what you planned? Amber shrugged. I said you'd feel alive. Was I wrong? Sarah should have left. She should have called an Uber, gone back to the hotel, driven back to her regular life, and never looked back. But the person she was trying to be, Cassie, wouldn't do that. Cassie was brave. Cassie took risks. Cassie didn't let fear control her. What would I have to do? Sarah heard herself asking. Marcus smiled. Just be a lookout. That's all. You stand outside, you watch for cars or cops, you text us if anything looks wrong. Easy. And when it's done, I give you $1,000 cash just for standing there for 20 minutes. $1,000. Sarah had never had that kind of money of her own. But more than the money, it was the transgression itself that called to her. This was the opposite of everything she had ever been. This was real rebellion, real freedom, real choice. When? She asked. Tomorrow night, Marcus said. If you're serious. Sarah looked at Amber one more time, searching for some sign that this was just a test, that they would laugh and leave and the weekend would end with a funny story about the time they almost did something crazy. But Amber wasn't laughing. She was watching Sarah with an expression of curiosity, like Sarah was an experiment, and Amber was waiting to see the results. I'm serious, Sarah said. And with those 2 words, Sarah Chun, the perfect daughter, the golden child, the girl who had never broken a rule in her life, agreed to commit a felony. What Sarah couldn't see What the darkness of the club hid from her was the look that passed between Amber and Marcus. A look of satisfaction. A look that suggested this had been planned all along. Because Amber Reeves had her own reasons for wanting Sarah Chun to fall from grace. Reasons that went back further than their friendship. Reasons that would destroy everything Sarah thought she knew about the person she had trusted most. If you're still here, leave a comment. Tell me what you think is really going on. Because the truth is darker than you can imagine, and we're just getting started. Saturday afternoon arrived with clear skies and temperatures that felt more like late summer than early fall. Sarah woke up in the hotel room with a headache and a sense of dread that she tried to ignore. Amber was already awake, sitting cross-legged on her bed with her laptop open, looking at what appeared to be aerial maps and property layouts. "Good morning, Cassie," Amber said without looking up. "Sleep okay?" Sarah sat up slowly. In the daylight, with the club music no longer pounding in her ears and the alcohol completely out of her system, everything about last night felt surreal and stupid. "I don't think I can do this." "Do what?" "You know what. The house. Breaking in. All of it." Amber finally looked at her, and her expression was unreadable. "That's fine. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. That's the whole point of this weekend. Remember? Making your own choices." "But Marcus doesn't care either way. He can do this without us. I just thought you wanted to push yourself, to see what it feels like to step completely outside the lines. But if you'd rather just go home and go back to being Sarah Chun, perfect student, that's your choice." The way Amber said it, like going back to being herself, was somehow pathetic, made Sarah's jaw tighten. This was the pattern she had been fighting her whole life. Someone set expectations, and she felt compelled to meet them, even when those expectations were destructive. "I need coffee," Sarah said, standing up and heading for the bathroom. She looked at herself in the mirror. Without the makeup and costume from last night, she looked exactly like herself again. Sarah Chun, valedictorian, Stanford-bound, the girl who never disappointed anyone. Except she was disappointing herself. Every single day. By being who everyone else needed her to be instead of figuring out who she actually was. When she came out of the bathroom, Amber was on the phone. "Yeah, we're in." "No, I think she's good." "Okay, I'll text you the address. See you at 9. She hung up and smiled at Sarah. Marcus says no pressure. But he also said the family's flight lands tomorrow morning. So, tonight is the only window. If we're going to do this, it has to be tonight. Sarah felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff. One step forward and everything would change. She could never go back to being the person she was before. But maybe that person needed to die anyway. Maybe the only way to find out who she really was underneath all the expectations was to completely destroy the perfect image she had maintained for so long. "What's in the house?" Sarah asked. "What is Marcus really after?" Amber hesitated for just a moment. "He didn't give me all the details. Something about documents that prove the father and the family screwed him over in a business deal. He wants them back. That's it. Just documents. And probably some cash if they're stupid enough to leave any lying around." "Sarah, these people are rich. Like, really rich. They won't even notice if some stuff goes missing. It's not like we're robbing a struggling family trying to make ends meet." Sarah wanted to believe this. She wanted to believe that what they were planning was somehow morally justified, that the people they would be stealing from deserved it. But she knew, deep down, that she was just making excuses. "I need to think about it," Sarah said. "Think fast," Amber replied. "Because we need to leave here by 8 if we're going to scout the location properly." They spent the afternoon walking around downtown Minneapolis, neither of them directly addressing the decision that loomed over them. Amber bought them lunch at a Thai restaurant, took photos of street art with her expensive camera, and talked about her plans for college. "I'm not going," Amber said casually as they sat on a bench near the Mississippi River. "To college, I mean. My mom thinks I am, but I'm not." Sarah stared at her. "What? Why not?" "Because it's a scam. For years, and $100,000 in debt, just to get a piece of paper that says you're qualified to sit in a cubicle for 40 years. No thanks. I'd rather travel. I'd rather take risks. I'd rather live." "But how will you support yourself?" Amber smiled mysteriously. "I have plans. Opportunities. Things my mom doesn't know about. Things nobody knows about except Marcus." There was again. Marcus. The dangerous stranger who seemed to have more influence over Amber than Sarah had realized. "How long have you known him?" Sarah asked carefully. "Few months. We met online. He's helped me with some projects." "What kind of projects?" Amber turned to look at Sarah directly. You're asking a lot of questions suddenly. Are you having second thoughts about trusting me? I'm having second thoughts about all of this. Then don't do it. I mean it, Sarah. If you don't want to be part tonight, you could drive back to Westfield right now. I'll tell Marcus you changed your mind. No hard feelings. But there would be hard feelings. Sarah could see it in Amber's eyes. If she backed out now, their friendship would be over. Amber would see her as weak, as fake, as someone who talked about wanting freedom, but was too scared to actually claim it. And maybe Amber would be right. I'll do it, Sarah said quietly. But just as a lookout. I'm not going inside. Amber's smile returned. That's all I need you to do. You'll be amazing. They met Marcus at a gas station on the edge of the suburbs at 8:45. He was driving a nondescript gray sedan and wearing all black clothing. When Sarah got out of Amber's car to meet him, he looked her over with an expression she couldn't quite read. You ready for this? He asked. She's ready. Amber answered for her. I've been coaching her all day. The house was in an exclusive neighborhood called Willowbrook Estates, the kind of place where every lawn was perfectly manicured and every house looked like it belonged in an architectural magazine. The Kensington house was at the end of a cul-de-sac, a massive modern structure with floor-to-ceiling windows and a 3-car garage. Marcus parked 2 streets over, and they walked to the house on foot, staying in the shadows. Sarah's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. This was really happening. She was really about to commit a crime. You stand here, Marcus instructed, positioning her near a tree that gave her a view of the street in both directions. You see a car coming, you text us immediately. You see anyone walking, you text us. You see anything that looks wrong, you text us. Got it. Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. We'll be in and out in 15 minutes, maybe 20. The security system is already disabled. I handled that earlier today. How? Sarah started. Don't worry about how. Just keep your eyes open and your phone ready. Amber squeezed Sarah's shoulder. You're doing great. This is the most alive you've ever felt, right? Sarah wanted to say no. She wanted to say she felt sick and terrified and desperately wanted to go home. But she just nodded again. She watched as Amber and Marcus approached the house from the side, away from the streetlights. Marcus did something to a window that Sarah couldn't quite see, and then they were inside. The house remained dark. They were professionals at this, or at least Marcus was. Sarah stood beneath the tree, her phone clutched in her sweating hand, and watched the street. A minute passed, then 5, then 10. Everything remained quiet. The neighborhood was eerily silent, the kind of wealthy suburb where people stayed inside their houses and lived separate lives behind expensive security systems. At the 12-minute mark, Sarah saw headlights. A car was coming down the street, moving slowly. Her hand shook as she pulled out her phone to text Marcus, but before she could, the car turned into a driveway 3 houses down. Just a neighbor coming home. She let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. 15 minutes. Then 17. What was taking so long? At the 20-minute mark, Sarah heard something that made her blood turn to ice. A sound from inside the house. Not a quiet sound of people moving carefully. A loud crash, like something heavy had been knocked over. And then she heard something even worse. A scream. Not Amber's voice. Not Marcus's voice. A different voice. A woman's voice, shrill with terror, coming from inside the house that was supposed to be empty. Sarah stood frozen, her mind unable to process what was happening. The family was supposed to be away. That's what Marcus had said. The house was supposed to be empty. But someone was inside. Someone was home. And now they had heard Amber and Marcus breaking in. Sarah should have run. Every instinct screamed at her to turn and run and never look back. But she couldn't move. She stood there, paralyzed, as lights suddenly blazed on inside the house. More shouting. A man's voice now, angry and commanding. I've called the police. Get out of my house. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from Amber. Plan changed. Get the car. Sarah's fingers fumbled with her phone. She texted back. What's happening? The response came immediately. Just get the CR now. Meet US behind the house. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. Sarah started backing away from the tree, her legs weak. She needed to run. She needed to get to the car and leave and somehow pretend this night had never happened. But then she heard the front door of the house slam open, and she saw a figure emerge. It was Marcus, and he was carrying something. Not documents. Not papers. A laptop and what looked like jewelry boxes. He wasn't here to retrieve something that belonged to him. He was here to rob the house. This had always been a robbery. Amber came out seconds later, her face pale in the streetlight. And then Sarah saw the absolute worst thing she could have possibly seen. Amber was already at the park when Sarah arrived, sitting on their usual bench. She looked terrible, her eyes red from crying. Her usually confident posture collapsed into something defeated. "Did you see?" Amber asked as Sarah sat down. "Yeah. She had a heart attack. We didn't touch her. We didn't do anything to her directly. We broke in her house, Amber. We terrified her. That's what killed her." Amber was quiet for a long moment. "I know. What are we going to do?" "Nothing. We do nothing. Marcus is right. We split up. We never talk about this. We go back to our normal lives." Sarah stared at her. "A woman is dead. And telling the police won't bring her back. It will just destroy our lives too. Think about it, Sarah. You have Stanford. You have your whole future. Are you really going to throw all of that away?" "I already threw it away when I agreed to this." "No. You threw it away if you confess. If you stay quiet, you still have a chance. The woman saw me, not you. You were outside the whole time. As far as anyone knows, you had nothing to do with this." Sarah wanted to believe this. She desperately wanted to believe that she could somehow walk away from this night without consequences. But she knew better. Consequences didn't always come from the outside. Sometimes they came from the inside, from the knowledge of what you had done, from the person you had become. "What about Marcus?" Sarah asked. "What if he gets caught? What if he tells the police about us?" "He won't. He has too much to lose. He's got priors, Sarah. If he gets caught for this, he's going away for life. He's not going to talk. And what if the police connect this to us somehow? What if someone saw your car? What if there are cameras we didn't know about?" Amber's face went pale. There weren't any cameras. Marcus checked. "Are you sure about that? Are you absolutely certain?" The doubt in Amber's eyes was all the answer Sarah needed. They sat in silence for several minutes, both of them processing the magnitude of what had happened. Finally, Amber spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I brought you into this. I thought it would be harmless. I thought it would be an adventure. Why did you really invite me?" Sarah asked. "Was this always the plan? To get me to help with the robbery?" Amber hesitated, just long enough for Sarah to know the answer was more complicated than a simple yes or no. Marcus needed help, Amber admitted. He wanted someone who could be a lookout, someone who would seem trustworthy and innocent if things went wrong. "I suggested you." Sarah felt like she had been punched in the stomach. "You used me. I gave you what you asked for. You wanted to be someone different. You wanted to break free from being perfect. I showed you how. By turning me into an accessory to murder. It's not murder. It was an accident. She had a heart attack. Because we were robbing her house." Their voices had risen, and Sarah suddenly became aware that they were in a public park having this conversation. She lowered her voice to a harsh whisper. "I trusted you. I thought you were my friend. I'm your friend. That's why I'm telling you to stay quiet and protect yourself. A real friend wouldn't let you destroy your life over something you can't change." Sarah stood up. "I need to go." "Where?" "I don't know. Away from you." "Sarah, wait." But Sarah was already walking away, her mind spinning. She couldn't go to the police. Amber was right about that much. Confessing would destroy everything she had worked for, would devastate her parents, would end her future before it had even begun. But staying quiet meant living with this guilt forever. It meant being complicit in a woman's death. It meant becoming someone she didn't recognize. As she walked home, Sarah's phone buzzed with a news alert. The police were asking anyone with information about the Willowbrook Estates home invasion to come forward. They were reviewing security footage from neighboring homes. They were confident they would find the perpetrators. Sarah's blood ran cold. Security footage. For neighboring homes. Amber had said there were no cameras, but Marcus had only checked the Kensington house. He hadn't checked the neighbors. They were going to get caught. It was only a matter of time. The rest of Sunday passed in a blur of anxiety. Sarah tried to act normal around her parents, tried to eat dinner, and respond to their questions about her study session with Amber. Tried to pretend that everything was fine. But nothing was fine. Nothing would ever be fine again. That night, lying in bed, Sarah made a decision. She couldn't live like this. She couldn't spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, waiting for the police to knock on her door. She couldn't become someone who valued her own future more than taking responsibility for what she had done. She would go to the police in the morning. She would tell them everything. She would accept whatever consequences came from that decision. It was the first truly autonomous choice she had made in her entire life. Not a choice to please her parents, or impress her teachers, or prove something to Amber. A choice that came from her own sense of right and wrong. She fell asleep around midnight, feeling something almost like peace. Tomorrow, everything would change. But at least she would be able to live with herself. She had no idea that she wouldn't get the chance to make that confession. Because while Sarah slept, someone else was making decisions that would take the choice out of her hands completely. What Sarah didn't know was that Marcus had been arrested that evening. A pawn shop owner had recognized one of the stolen items and called the police. And when the police brought Marcus in for questioning, he had made a decision of his own. He was going to talk. He was going to give them names. And he was going to make sure that if he went down for this, he wouldn't be going down alone. Type, no way, if you're still watching. Because everything you think you know about this story is about to be turned upside down. Sarah woke up Monday morning to the sound of her mother screaming. She bolted upright in bed, her heart pounding, certain that the police had arrived. But when she ran downstairs, she found her parents in the living room, both of them staring at the television with expressions of absolute horror. "What's happening?" Sarah asked, her voice shaking. Her father turned to look at her, and there were tears streaming down his face. "It's Amber," he said. "Oh God, Sarah, it's Amber." Sarah looked at the television screen, and the world tilted beneath her feet. The news was showing a photo of Amber Reeves. Not the confident, rebellious girl Sarah knew, but a formal school photo that made her look younger and more innocent. The headline beneath the photo read, "Local teen found dead in apparent suicide." No, this couldn't be real. The news anchor was speaking, her voice somber and professional. 17-year-old Amber Reeves was found dead in her home early this morning by her mother. Police are investigating the death as a possible suicide. This tragedy comes just one day after Reeves was identified as a person of interest in the home invasion that resulted in the death of Margaret Kensington in Minneapolis. The rest of the words faded into static. Sarah couldn't process what she was hearing. Amber was dead. Amber had killed herself. Because of what they had done. Because she knew they were going to be caught. Sarah's mother was crying, reaching out to hug her. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I know you two were close. This must be such a shock." Sarah stood frozen in her mother's embrace, unable to feel anything. Her mind kept trying to make sense of the impossible. Amber had been alive yesterday. They had sat on that bench together. They had argued about what to do. And now she was gone. "The police are going to want to talk to you," her father said gently. "They're interviewing all of Amber's friends. They want to know if anyone saw signs that she was struggling." Signs. Sarah had seen signs. She had seen Amber falling apart yesterday at the park. She had seen the fear in her eyes, the desperation. And Sarah had walked away. What if she hadn't walked away? What if she had stayed, had talked Amber down, had convinced her that they would get through this together? Would Amber still be alive? The doorbell rang, and Sarah's father went to answer it. Two police officers stood on the porch, their expressions professionally sympathetic. "Mr. and Mrs. Chun, we're very sorry to bother you during this difficult time. We're here to speak with Sarah, if that's possible." Sarah's mother looked at her with concern. "Do you feel up to talking to them, honey?" Sarah nodded mechanically. What choice did she have? They sat in the living room, the two officers across from Sarah and her parents. One of them, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes, did most of the talking. "Sarah, we understand you're a close friend with Amber Reeves. We're so sorry for your loss. We just need to ask you a few questions about the last time you saw her." "Okay," Sarah whispered. "When was the last time you spoke to Amber?" Sarah's mind raced. If she told the truth, she would have to explain why they met yesterday. She would have to tell them about the robbery. She would have to confess everything. But if she lied, Friday night, Sarah heard herself say, "We had a study session at her house. I stayed over." The officer made a note. "And how did she seem to you? Was she upset about anything? Acting strangely?" "No. She seemed normal." "Did she mention anything about Minneapolis? About going there over the weekend?" Sarah's blood ran cold. They knew. They already knew Amber had been in Minneapolis. This wasn't just about her suicide. This was about the robbery. "No," Sarah lied. "She didn't mention Minneapolis." The officer studied her face for a long moment. "Sarah, we know this is difficult, but we need you to be completely honest with us. Amber's mother told us that Amber said she was staying at your house this weekend. But your parents say you were at Amber's house. Can you help us understand this discrepancy? Sarah's mother looked at her with confusion. Sarah? What's going on? This was it. The moment where everything fell apart. Sarah could feel her perfect life crumbling, could see the disappointment already forming on her parents' faces. Sarah started, her voice breaking, and then the other officer, a man who had been silent until now, spoke up. Before you say anything else, Sarah, I should inform you that we've arrested someone in connection with the Willowbrook Estates home invasion. His name is Marcus Delgado. Do you know that name? Sarah shook her head, the lie coming easier this time. He's claiming that Amber Reeves recruited him to rob the house. He says he barely knew her, that she contacted him online and planned the whole thing. He's saying he was just hired help. Sarah's mind was spinning. Marcus was blaming everything on Amber. Amber who couldn't defend herself anymore. Amber who was dead. He also mentioned, the officer continued, that there might have been a third person involved. Someone Amber brought along. He didn't get a good look at this person, but he thinks it was a girl. Someone young. Maybe a friend of Amber's. The room was completely silent. Sarah could feel 3 pairs of eyes on her, waiting for her reaction. I don't know anything about that, Sarah said, and she was surprised by how steady her voice sounded. Amber and I were friends, but she never talked to me about anything like that. I had no idea she was involved in something so terrible. The female officer leaned forward. Sarah, if you know anything at all about where Amber was this weekend, you need to tell us. This is very serious. A woman died. I know, Sarah said, and now the tears came, real and uncontrollable. I know a woman died, and it's horrible, but I don't know anything. I thought Amber was at my house. I was at her house. We must have gotten our signals crossed. That's all. Her mother put an arm around her. Officers, I think that's enough. My daughter is clearly devastated about losing her friend. If she says she doesn't know anything, then she doesn't know anything. The officers exchanged a look. Finally, the woman stood up. Okay, we appreciate your time. Sarah, if you think of anything at all, please call us. She handed Sarah a business card. After they left, Sarah's parents sat with her on the couch, both of them trying to comfort her. They believed her. They trusted her. They had no idea their daughter was lying to their faces. I can't believe Amber was involved in something like that, her mother said. She always seemed so confident, so together. People hide things, her father said quietly, even from the people closest to them. Sarah excused herself and went to her room, claiming she needed to be alone. As soon as her door was closed, she pulled out her phone with shaking hands. There was a text from an unknown number. This is Marcus. Don't try to reply. This phone is already destroyed. Just listen. I told the cops Amber planned everything. I told them I barely knew her. I didn't mention you because you're more useful to me out there than in jail. But that protection comes with a price. Check your email for instructions. And Sarah, don't even think about talking to the cops. I know where you live. I know where your parents work. Stay quiet. And we both walk away from this. Talk, and everyone you love suffers. Your choice. Sarah read the message 3 times, her hands trembling. Marcus was blackmailing her. He had killed Amber, because that's what this was, Sarah suddenly understood. Amber hadn't killed herself. Marcus had made it look like suicide to tie up loose ends. And now Sarah was trapped. She opened her email with shaking hands. There was a message from an encrypted address with no subject line. Here's how this works. You keep your mouth shut about the robbery. You play the grieving friend. You go to Stanford and live your perfect life. In exchange, I'll never contact you again. But I need one more thing from you first. Just one small job, and then we're done forever. Details to follow. Don't disappoint me. Sarah felt bile rising in her throat. Marcus had murdered Amber. He was threatening her family, and now he wanted her to help him with something else. She was no longer just an accessory to a robbery gone wrong. She was being turned into an accomplice to murder. And the worst part, the part that made Sarah want to scream until her throat was raw, was that she couldn't see a way out. If she went to the police now, Marcus would hurt her parents. If she stayed quiet, she would become more deeply involved in whatever he was planning. She had wanted freedom from her perfect life, and she had gotten it. But this freedom looked nothing like what she had imagined. But here's what Sarah didn't know. Here's the twist that changes everything you've been thinking about this story. Marcus didn't kill Amber. Amber wasn't even dead. The body that Amber's mother found that morning wasn't Amber at all. And the person who had planned this entire nightmare from the very beginning, wasn't Marcus. It was someone much closer to Sarah than she could have ever imagined. Someone who had been watching her, studying her, waiting for the perfect moment to destroy the perfect daughter's perfect life. Everything Sarah thought she knew about the past 3 days was a lie, and the real nightmare was just beginning. Sarah spent Monday in a fog of terror and confusion. She went through the motions of being the devastated friend, crying when expected, accepting condolences from teachers and classmates, maintaining the perfect mask even as everything inside her was screaming. Westfield High held an emergency assembly about Amber's death. The principal talked about mental health resources and the importance of reaching out if you were struggling. Sarah sat in the auditorium, surrounded by hundreds of students, feeling more alone than she had ever felt in her life. After school, she drove home on autopilot, her mind replaying Marcus's message over and over. He wanted something from her, one more job, and then she'd be free. But Sarah knew better than to believe that. People like Marcus never let you go. Once you were useful to them, they kept using you until there was nothing left. She pulled in her driveway and noticed something immediately. Her parents' cars were both there, which was unusual for a Monday afternoon. Her father should be at work. Her mother should be at the hospital. Sarah's stomach clenched with dread as she walked to the front door. Inside, she found her parents sitting in the living room with someone she didn't recognize. A woman in her 30s wearing casual clothes, with short dark hair and an expression that was somehow both sympathetic and calculating. "Sarah," her father said, his voice strained. "This is Agent Rebecca Morrison. She's with the FBI." FBI? Sarah's legs nearly gave out beneath her. This was it. They had figured it out. They were going to arrest her. "Please sit down," Agent Morrison said, gesturing to the chair across from her. "I know this must be frightening, but I promise you're not in any trouble. I just need to ask you some questions." "About Amber?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "About Amber, and about your family." "My family." Agent Morrison opened a folder and pulled out a photograph. "Do you recognize this person?" Sarah looked at the photo and felt her world tilt. It was a young woman, maybe in her mid-20s, with features that looked strangely familiar. She had Sarah's eyes, Sarah's nose, Sarah's general facial structure. "No," Sarah said slowly. "Who is she?" Her mother made a sound that was half sob, half gasp. Sarah looked at her parents and saw that they were both crying. "Mom? Dad? What's going on?" Agent Morrison spoke gently. "Her name was Lily Chun. She was your sister." The words made no sense. Sarah shook her head. "I don't have a sister. I'm an only child." "You had a sister," her father said, his voice breaking. "She died when you were 2 years old. You were too young to remember her." Sarah stared at her parents, trying to process this information. She had a sister who died, and her parents had never told her. "Why didn't you tell me?" Her mother was crying too hard to speak. Her father answered, his voice heavy with pain. "It was too difficult. Losing Lily nearly destroyed us. We couldn't talk about it, couldn't keep her pictures up, couldn't bear the constant reminder. When you were old enough to ask questions, we told ourselves it would be easier to let you think you were an only child. We thought we were protecting you from pain." "But what does this have to do with Amber?" Sarah asked, looking back at Agent Morrison. The FBI agent pulled out another photograph. This one showed Lily Chun at what looked like a high school graduation, and standing next to her, smiling broadly, was a woman Sarah recognized immediately. It was Amber's mother. Lily and Rachel Reeves were best friends in high school, Agent Morrison explained. They were inseparable. When Lily died, Rachel took it very hard. Your parents had moved away by then, trying to start fresh. Rachel stayed in their hometown and eventually had a daughter of her own. "Amber," Sarah whispered. "Yes, Amber, who Rachel raised on stories about Lily. Stories about how brilliant Lily was, how talented, how much potential she had. Stories about how Lily's death was a tragedy that could have been prevented." Sarah's father spoke up, his voice defensive. "Lily had a congenital heart condition. There was nothing we could have done differently. The doctors told us." "I'm not here to judge her medical decisions," Agent Morrison interrupted gently. "I'm here because Rachel Reeves blamed you for Lily's death. She believed that if you had gotten proper medical care sooner, if you had taken the condition more seriously, Lily would still be alive. And she raised Amber on that narrative. The pieces were starting to come together in Sarah's mind, but the picture they formed was impossible to accept. Are you saying Amber befriended me because of my sister? We believe Amber targeted you deliberately, yes. She transferred to Westfield High specifically to get close to you. Everything about your friendship was calculated. But why? What was she trying to accomplish? Agent Morrison pulled out more documents. That's what we're trying to figure out. Here's what we know for certain. Amber Reeves is not dead. The body found in her home this morning was not hers. Sarah's mind went blank. What? Amber staged her own death. The body was a Jane Doe from a morgue in Milwaukee, someone who had been dead for weeks. Amber has been planning this for months, maybe longer. She stole the body, planted it in her home, and made it look like a suicide. Her mother was in on it. She's the one who discovered the body and called the police. Where is Amber now? We don't know. But based on evidence we found, we believe she's planning something. Something that involves you. Sarah felt like she couldn't breathe. The robbery in Minneapolis. Was that part of her plan? Agent Morrison's expression sharpened. What do you know about the robbery? Sarah looked at her parents, saw the trust in their eyes, the belief that their perfect daughter would never do anything wrong. And she made a choice. She told them everything. She told them about wanting to be someone different, about Amber encouraging her to break free, about the trip to Minneapolis. She told them about Marcus and the house and the woman who had died. She told them about the guilt and the fear and the blackmail. She told them the truth, and with each word, she watched her parents' faces change from confusion to horror to heartbreak. When she finished, the silence in the room was deafening. Her mother spoke first, her voice hollow. You helped rob a house. A woman died because of you. I didn't know she was home. You thought it was okay to break into someone's house and steal from them as long as nobody got hurt. Her father's voice was sharper than Sarah had ever heard it. Who are you? This isn't the daughter we raised. Maybe it is, Sarah said, something breaking inside her. Maybe this is who I've always been underneath. Someone who is so desperate to be anything other than your perfect daughter that I destroyed someone's life and my own. Agent Morrison held up a hand. Let's table the family discussion for now. Sarah, I need you to focus. You said Marcus sent you a message about one more job. Did he give you any details? Sarah pulled out her phone and showed the agent the email. Morrison read it, her expression growing darker. This is a problem. Marcus Delgado is not who he says he is. His real name is Marcus Reeves. He's Amber's half-brother. The room spun. What? Rachel Reeves had a son from a previous relationship before she married Amber's father. Marcus is 10 years older than Amber, and he has an extensive criminal record. But here's what you need to understand. Everything that happened this weekend, the robbery, the woman's death, the blackmail, all of it was orchestrated by Amber and Marcus together. They've been planning this for over a year. But why? What do they want from me? Agent Morrison pulled out one final photograph. It showed a house, Sarah's house. We found this in Amber's room, along with detailed floor plans of your home, your parents' work schedules, and information about your family financial accounts. Sarah, we believe Amber and Marcus are planning to kidnap you. Sarah's mother gasped. Her father stood up abruptly, his face pale. Kidnap her? What? Revenge, Agent Morrison said simply. Rachel Reeves blames your family for Lily's death. She raised both of her children on that hatred. Marcus has been in and out of prison for years, but Amber was the smart one, the planner. She spent years getting close to Sarah, earning her trust, learning everything about her life. The robbery was a test. She wanted to see if Sarah would break the law, if she could be manipulated. And Sarah, you passed that test perfectly. Sarah felt sick. So everything, the friendship, the conversations about freedom and being authentic, all of it was fake. We believe so, yes. What happens now? Now we use you as bait. Agent Morrison explained the plan carefully. They would let Marcus believe that Sarah was still under his control. They would have her respond to his next message, agree to whatever he wanted. When Amber and Marcus made their move, the FBI would be ready. It's dangerous, Morrison admitted, but it's the best chance we have of catching them before someone else gets hurt. Sarah's mother was shaking her head. No, absolutely not. You're not using my daughter as bait. Mrs. Chun, With all due respect, your daughter is already involved. Amber and Marcus won't stop until they get what they want. This way, at least we can control the situation." Sarah looked at her parents, saw the fear in their eyes, the disappointment, the shattered trust. Everything she had worked so hard to build between them was destroyed. The perfect daughter was gone, replaced by someone who had lied and broken the law and put herself in danger. But maybe, just maybe, she could do something right for once. "I'll do it," Sarah said. "Sarah, no," her father started. "I have to, Dad. This is my fault. I let Amber manipulate me because I was so desperate to be something other than perfect. I need to fix this." "You can't fix this by putting yourself in danger." "I can't fix it by doing nothing either." Agent Morrison intervened. "Mr. and Mrs. Chun, I understand your concern. But Sarah is right. This is the best option we have. And I promise you, we will have agents watching her every second. She will be safe." Sarah's parents looked at each other, having one of those silent conversations that long-married couples can have. Finally, reluctantly, they nodded. "Okay," her father said. "But if anything, and I mean anything goes wrong, you pull her out immediately." Agreed. That evening, with Agent Morrison coaching her, Sarah sent a reply to Marcus's encrypted email. "I'll do whatever you need. Just tell me when and where." The response came within minutes. "Tomorrow night, 10 p.m. I'll send you an address. Come alone. Bring your phone and nothing else. If I see any sign of cops, the deal is off and your parents pay the price." Sarah read the message to Agent Morrison, who nodded grimly. "He's going to take you to a secondary location. That's where Amber will be waiting. We'll follow at a distance, but we won't move in until we have both of them in custody. What if something goes wrong? Then you run. Don't be a hero, Sarah. Your job is to survive long enough for us to get to you." That night, Sarah lay in bed, unable to sleep. She thought about Lily, the sister she never knew she had. She thought about how her parents' grief had shaped their entire lives, how their fear of losing another daughter had driven them to push Sarah toward perfection. She thought about Amber, who had seemed like a friend, like someone who understood her, but who had really been an enemy all along. Someone who had studied her weaknesses and exploited them perfectly. And she thought about tomorrow night, when she would walk into a trap and hope that the FBI could save her before it was too late. But Sarah didn't know the most important thing of all. She didn't know that Agent Morrison wasn't really FBI. She didn't know that everything she had been told about Lily and Rachel and the revenge plot was true. But she didn't know that there was one more player in this game. Someone who had been there from the very beginning. Someone who wanted the Chun family destroyed just as much as Amber and Marcus did. Someone sitting in Sarah's own house right now, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Tuesday passed in agonizing slow motion. Sarah went to school and played the role of the grieving friend one more time. Teachers were sympathetic. Classmates kept their distance, giving her space. The principal pulled her aside to ask if she needed to take a few days off. "No," Sarah said. "I need the normalcy." But there was nothing normal about any of this. Sarah was wired with a microphone and tracking device courtesy of Agent Morrison. She had a panic button in her pocket that would summon backup if things went wrong. And she had instructions burned in her memory. Stay calm, keep Marcus and Amber talking, and trust that help would arrive when needed. At home that evening, her parents could barely look at her. The disappointment was palpable, a thick presence in every room. Her mother made dinner mechanically, and they ate in silence. Her father kept glancing at her like she was a stranger wearing his daughter's face. "I'm sorry," Sarah said finally, unable to bear the quiet any longer. "I'm so sorry for everything." "We know," her mother said quietly. "But sorry doesn't fix this, Sarah. Sorry doesn't bring that woman back. Sorry doesn't erase what you've done. I know, but I'm trying to make it right. By putting yourself in danger." Her father's voice rose. "By walking into a trap? How is that making anything right?" "Because it's the only thing I can do." The argument was interrupted by Sarah's phone buzzing. A text from the encrypted number. Address, 1247, Industrial Drive, Warehouse District, 10 p.m. Don't be late. Sarah showed it to her parents. Her father immediately called Agent Morrison, who arrived within 15 minutes. "We've located the warehouse," Morrison said, spreading a map across their dining room table. "It's abandoned, been empty for 2 years. Perfect location for what they're planning. We'll have agents positioned on all sides. Sarah, you'll go in through the front entrance. We'll be listening to everything. Just keep them talking until we have confirmation that both Amber and Marcus are inside. What if there are others? Sarah asked. What if they brought help? Then we adapt. But our intelligence suggests it's just the two of them. Your intelligence has been wrong before, Sarah's father said sharply. Morrison's expression didn't change. Mr. Chun, I understand your frustration, but this is the best option we have. Sarah will be safe. At 9:30, Sarah got into Morrison's unmarked car. Her parents watched from the doorway, both of them looking like they'd aged a decade in the past 2 days. As they drove toward the warehouse district, Sarah's phone buzzed again. Another message from the encrypted number. Change of plans. New address. Your house. Right now. Sarah's blood turned to ice. They're at my house. My parents are there. Morrison grabbed the radio. All units. Suspect location has changed. They're at the Chin residence. Move in now. But even as Morrison was speaking, Sarah saw something that made her stomach drop. They were passing Sarah's street, and Morrison wasn't turning. What are you doing? My house is back there. I know. Morrison's voice had changed. The professional FBI tone was gone, replaced by something colder, harder. Sarah reached for the door handle, but it was locked. She tried the window controls, but they didn't work. She was trapped. Who are you? Sarah asked, though she was starting to understand. Morrison, or whoever she really was, pulled the car into an empty parking lot and turned to face Sarah fully for the first time. And now that Sarah was really looking, now that she wasn't blinded by the FBI credentials and the authoritative manner, she could see the family resemblance. The woman had Amber's eyes. My name is Rachel Reeves, the woman said. I'm Amber's mother. And you, Sarah Chun, are going to pay for what your family did to mine. Sarah's mind raced, trying to piece together what was happening. You pretended to be FBI. The documents, the badge, everything was fake. Very good fakes, but fake nonetheless. Marcus has contacts who can produce anything for the right price. Your parents believed me because they wanted to believe me, because you had just confessed to being part of a robbery, and they were desperate for someone official to take control of the situation. But the real FBI has no idea any of this is happening. By the time they figure it out, this will all be over. What do you want from me? Rachel's expression twisted into something ugly. I want you to understand what it feels like to lose everything. I want your parents to know the pain of having their daughter taken from them. I want the Chin family to suffer the way mine has suffered for 20 years. My parents didn't kill Lily. She had a heart condition. They neglected her. Rachel's voice rose to a shout. They were so focused on their careers, on building their perfect American dream life, that they ignored the signs. Lily complained about feeling tired, about her heart racing. And what did your father say? She's just being dramatic. She'll be fine. But she wasn't fine, was she? She died in her sleep at age 8 because your parents were too busy to take her to a doctor. That's not how my parents described it. Your parents lied to you about having a sister at all. What makes you think they told you the truth about how she died? Sarah wanted to argue, but she couldn't. Her parents had lied about Lily's existence for her entire life. What else had they lied about? So you sent Amber to befriend me, to manipulate me into committing crimes, so you could, what? Frame me? Destroy my future. That was part of it. But the robbery was supposed to be different. The Kensington house wasn't random, Sarah. Margaret Kensington was your mother's best friend from medical school. She was one of the doctors who told your parents that Lily's symptoms weren't serious, that they shouldn't worry. She shares the blame for Lily's death. Sarah's stomach churned. You targeted her specifically. I've spent 20 years planning this. 20 years identifying everyone who contributed to Lily's death and figuring out how to make them pay. The Kensingtons were just the beginning. She died. Margaret Kensington died because of the robbery. Rachel smiled, and it was the most chilling thing Sarah had ever seen. I know. That part worked out better than I expected. A heart attack brought on by stress. Poetic, don't you think? The same thing that killed Lily. You're insane. I'm a mother who lost her child. There's nothing I won't do to make this right. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from her father. Are you okay? Where are you? Rachel grabbed the phone from Sarah's hands before she could respond. She read the message and laughed. They're worried about you. How sweet. Let's let them worry a little longer. She typed a response. I'm fine. At the warehouse. Things are going according to plan. My parents will know something's wrong, Sarah said desperately. They'll call the real FBI. By the time they do, it will be too late. Marcus is at your house right now. He's explaining to your parents exactly what you did this weekend. The robbery, the woman's death, your role in all of it. He has evidence, photos, text messages. By the time he's done, your parents will know that their perfect daughter is actually a criminal. They already know. I told them. Rachel's smile faltered. You what? I confessed everything yesterday. They know about the robbery. They know I helped. For the first time, Rachel looked uncertain. You're lying. I'm not. Call Marcus. Ask him. My parents already know what I did. Your plan to destroy their image of me won't work, because I already destroyed it myself. Rachel pulled out her phone and dialed. After a moment, someone answered. Marcus, has she told them? What? When? Rachel's face darkened. And you didn't think to tell me this. She listened for another moment, then hung up abruptly. Looks like my daughter isn't the only one who failed to follow the plan, Rachel said bitterly. Marcus was supposed to confirm that your parents were in the dark before we moved forward. He got impatient. So what happens now? Your revenge plot is falling apart. Plans change. I'm adaptable. Rachel started the car again. We're going to the warehouse after all. Marcus is bringing your parents. And we're all going to have a conversation about accountability and consequences. You're going to kill us. I'm going to make your parents watch you die. The same way I had to live knowing Lily died while I wasn't there to protect her. Then they'll understand what I've been living with for 20 years. Sarah's hand crept toward the panic button in her pocket, but Rachel saw the movement. Don't even think about it. Give me whatever device they gave you. Sarah reluctantly pulled out the panic button and the microphone wire hidden under her shirt. Rachel threw them out the window. No cavalry coming to save you now. As they drove toward the warehouse, Sarah's mind raced through options. She could try to jump from the moving car, but they were going 60 miles an hour on the highway. She could try to fight Rachel, but the woman was bigger and probably armed. She could try to reason with her, but Rachel was clearly beyond reason. The only thing Sarah had left was the truth. You're not doing this for Lily, Sarah said quietly. You're doing this for yourself. Rachel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Excuse me. Lily died 20 years ago. She's not suffering anymore. She's at peace. But you can't let her go. You've built your entire life around this revenge fantasy because it's easier than accepting that sometimes terrible things happen and nobody's to blame. Your parents are to blame. Maybe they made mistakes. Maybe they should have taken her to the doctor sooner. But they didn't want her to die. They loved her. They've spent 20 years living with guilt and grief, just like you have. This won't bring Lily back. It won't make the pain go away. It will just create more death, more grief, more families destroyed. I don't care. Yes, you do. Because if you didn't care, you wouldn't have spent 20 years planning this. You would have just killed my parents and been done with it. But instead, you created this elaborate scheme because some part of you wants them to understand, to acknowledge what happened, to say they're sorry. Rachel's eyes were wet with tears now, but her expression remained hard. They'll never say it. People like your parents never take responsibility. Then give them the chance. Bring us all together. Let them hear your side of the story. Let them explain theirs. If after that you still want revenge, at least it will be an informed choice. They pulled into the warehouse parking lot. It was completely dark except for a single light in one of the windows. Rachel turned off the car and looked at Sarah. You're smarter than Amber gave you credit for. She thought you were just a pampered princess playing at rebellion. But you actually have a spine. Is that a compliment? It's an observation. Come on. Your parents are waiting. They walked into the warehouse together, Rachel's hand gripping Sarah's arm tightly. Inside, the space was cavernous and mostly empty except for some old equipment and debris. In the center of the space, under the single working light, Sarah saw her parents. They were tied to chairs, duct tape over their mouths, terror in their eyes. Standing behind them was Marcus, holding a gun, and sitting on a crate off to the side, very much alive, was Amber Reeves. Welcome to the family reunion, Amber said with a smile that looked nothing like the friend Sarah had known. We've been waiting for you. But Sarah barely heard her, because she was staring at something else. Something that changed everything again. Her father wasn't looking at her with terror. He was looking at Rachel Reeves with recognition. And suddenly Sarah understood the real truth. The final piece of the puzzle that nobody had told her. Sarah's father was trying to speak through the duct tape. His eyes locked on Rachel with an intensity that made Sarah's skin crawl. Rachel saw it too, and walked over to him slowly. Want to say something, Michael? After all these years, you finally want to talk. She ripped the tape off his mouth roughly. "Rachel, please," he gasped. "This isn't what you think. Isn't what I think. You let my daughter die." "She wasn't your daughter," Michael shouted, and the words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Sarah felt the world tilt. "What?" Her mother was crying behind her tape, shaking her head desperately. Marcus looked confused. Even Amber seemed surprised by this revelation. Rachel's voice was deadly quiet. "What did you just say?" "Lily wasn't your biological daughter," Michael said, tears streaming down his face. "She was ours. Linda's and mine. You couldn't have children, Rachel. Remember? You tried for years, and it never worked. So we agreed to help you. We agreed to let you raise her as your own, to be part of her life as the aunt and uncle, while you were her mother, in every way that mattered." Sarah couldn't breathe. The room was spinning. "You gave your daughter away." "We were 23 years old," her mother said, having worked the tape loose from her own mouth. "We weren't ready to be parents. Rachel was our best friend, and she was desperate for a child. It seemed like the perfect solution. She would raise Lily, we would be involved in her life, and when we were ready, we would have our own children. But Lily got sick," Michael continued. "And yes, Rachel, you're right. We didn't take it seriously enough. We thought she was just being dramatic, that she was tired from school. By the time we realized something was really wrong, it was too late. The heart condition had progressed too far. You killed her," Rachel whispered. "You gave me a daughter, and then you took her away. It was an accident. It was negligence. You were her biological parents, and you couldn't even be bothered to get her proper medical care. We tried," Linda screamed. "We tried everything. We took her to specialists. We got second opinions. We did everything the doctors told us to do. But her heart was damaged beyond repair. There was nothing anyone could do." Sarah looked at Amber, who had been silent through all of this. "Did you know about Lily being their biological daughter?" "No," Amber said quietly. "Mom never told me that part. She just said the Chins were responsible for Lily's death." "Because they are." Rachel turned on her daughter. "They gave birth to her, and then they killed her through their negligence. Or," Amber said slowly, standing up from the crate, "they made a terrible mistake 20 years ago, and you spent my entire life using me as a weapon in your revenge plot instead of letting me live my own life. Everything I did was for you. Everything you did was for Lily. I was never your daughter, Mom. I was just a replacement, a tool you could use to get back at the people you blame for your pain. You sent me to befriend Sarah, to manipulate her, to destroy her life. And I did it because I thought that's what family did. I thought that's what love looked like." Amber's voice was shaking now, tears streaming down her face. "But it's not love. It's obsession. It's sickness. And I'm done being part of it." "Amber," Rachel began. "My name isn't even Amber. You named me after Lily's middle name because you couldn't let her go. Everything about my existence has been about a dead girl I never met." Marcus stepped forward, the gun still in his hand, but lowering slightly. "Mom, maybe we should." "Don't you start," Rachel snapped. "You promised me you would see this through. Both of you promised." "I promised when I thought the Chins were monsters who deliberately let a child die," Amber said. "I didn't know they were just stupid kids who made a mistake. There's a difference." Sarah's mind was reeling, trying to process everything she'd learned. Her parents had given away their first daughter. They had watched her die from a condition they didn't catch in time. And then they'd had Sarah, their second chance, their redemption baby. No wonder they'd pushed her so hard toward perfection. No wonder they'd been so terrified of anything going wrong. They'd been trying to prove they could be good parents this time. They'd been trying to make up for Lily. "So that's why you never told me," Sarah said to her parents. "Because you were ashamed. Because you failed the first time and you were terrified of failing again." "We loved you," Linda said desperately. "Everything we did was because we loved you." "You loved the idea of me," Sarah interrupted. "The perfect daughter who would prove you got it right this time. But you never loved me, not the real me. You loved your second chance at redemption." "That's not true." "Then why couldn't I ever be anything less than perfect? Why did every bee feel like the end of the world? Why did you push and push and push until I broke?" The warehouse fell silent except for the sound of Sarah's crying. All of them were broken, she realized. All of them were products of Lily's death, carrying trauma and guilt and pain that had been passed down and amplified until it poisoned everything. Rachel spoke first, her voice hollow. "This doesn't change anything. You still need to pay for what you did." "Mom, stop," Amber said. "It's over. Look around. Look at what we've become. We've kidnapped people. We've stolen. We've hurt innocent people. And for what? To make ourselves feel better about something that happened 20 years ago. Margaret Kensington was an old woman who made a medical judgment call that turned out to be wrong. She didn't deserve to die, Mom. And the Chins don't deserve to die. And I don't want to be a murderer just because you couldn't let go of your grief. Marcus lowered his gun completely. I'm with Amber. This has gone too far. Rachel looked at her 2 children, betrayal written across her face. After everything I did for you, you traumatized us, Amber said flatly. You raised us on hatred and revenge. You turned us into criminals. That's what you did for us, Mom. Rachel turned to Sarah, and for a moment, Sarah saw something in the woman's eyes that looked almost like understanding. You really didn't know about any of this? About Lily? No. I found out about her 2 days ago. And your parents really pushed you toward perfection because they were trying to make up for their mistakes? Yes. Rachel looked at Michael and Linda, tied to their chairs, tear-stained and terrified. You destroyed my life. You gave me a daughter, and then you took her away, and you never even told me the truth about why. You let me believe you were just neglectful friends when really you were neglectful parents. We know, Michael said, and we're sorry. We've been sorry every single day for 20 years. But Rachel, please. Lily wouldn't want this. She was a kind, loving child. She wouldn't want you to hurt people in her name. You don't get to tell me what Lily would want. Neither do you. The voice came from the doorway. Everyone turned to see a man in his 50s standing in the entrance to the warehouse, flanked by 2 police officers. He was holding up FBI credentials that looked significantly more official than the fake ones Rachel had shown Sarah. My name is Special Agent David Morrison, he said. And yes, before you ask, Rebecca Morrison was my wife. My late wife. She died 3 years ago. Rachel Reeves, you're under arrest for kidnapping, conspiracy to commit murder, and fraud. How did you find us? Rachel asked, her voice defeated. Sarah's parents called the real FBI when she didn't come home on time. We tracked the car you were driving. It's registered in your name. You weren't as careful as you thought. As officers moved in to arrest Rachel, Marcus, and untie Sarah's parents, Agent Morrison approached Sarah. Are you all right? Physically? Yes. Otherwise, I have no idea. You'll need to come to the station to give a statement. About the robbery in Minneapolis, about tonight, about everything. Am I going to be arrested? Morrison sighed. That's not my call. But I'll tell you this. You're a minor who was manipulated by someone much older and more experienced. You cooperated with law enforcement. And most importantly, you told the truth, even when lying would have been easier. That counts for something. As Rachel was led away in handcuffs, she called out to Amber. I did this for you. I did everything for you. No, Mom, Amber said quietly. You did it for Lily. You always did everything for Lily. I was just the audience. 3 months later, Sarah sat in a courtroom for her sentencing hearing. She had pled guilty to conspiracy to commit burglary and had spent the past months in juvenile detention while awaiting trial. Her parents sat in the gallery, both of them looking older and more tired than Sarah had ever seen them. They had tried to visit her every day, but Sarah had refused most of their visits. She wasn't ready to forgive them yet. Maybe she never would be. The prosecutor argued for maximum sentencing. Sarah was nearly 18. She had knowingly participated in a crime, and her actions had contributed to Margaret Kensington's death. The defense attorney, provided by her parents and surprisingly skilled, argued for leniency. Sarah had been manipulated by adults with sophisticated criminal experience. She had been raised in an environment of extreme pressure and had been seeking escape, and she had cooperated fully with law enforcement. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes, listened to both sides and then turned to Sarah. Do you have anything to say before I pass sentence? Sarah stood on shaking legs. She had prepared a speech, something about being sorry and learning from her mistakes, but when she opened her mouth, different words came out. I can't bring Mrs. Kensington back. I can't undo the pain I caused her family. I can't erase the fact that I broke the law. But I can tell the truth about why it happened. My whole life, I was taught that I needed to be perfect, that anything less than perfect was failure. That failure was unacceptable. So when I started to crack under that pressure, I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know how to admit I was struggling. I just knew I needed to escape, even if that escape meant doing something terrible. She looked at her parents. My parents thought they were protecting me, by pushing me toward perfection, but they were really just passing down their own trauma, their own guilt about my sister. And I was so desperate to be anything other than their perfect daughter that I became the worst version of myself instead. She turned back to the judge. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking you to let me go. I'm just asking you to understand that perfection is a cage, and sometimes people do terrible things trying to escape from cages. What I need now is not punishment for the sake of punishment. What I need is help learning how to be a real person, with flaws and mistakes, and the ability to ask for support when I need it. The courtroom was silent. The judge studied Sarah for a long moment. Sarah Chun, you are hereby sentenced to 2 years in juvenile detention, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. You will undergo mandatory therapy for the duration of your sentence and probation. You will perform 500 hours of community service, and you will write a formal letter of apology to the Kensington family, though they are under no obligation to read it or respond to it. Sarah nodded, relief flooding through her. 2 years was manageable. She could survive 2 years. However, the judge continued, I want to be very clear about something. Your age and the circumstances of your manipulation were significant factors in my decision. But your actions resulted in a woman's death. That is something you will carry with you for the rest of your life. And it should be. Use these 2 years to figure out who you are without the pressure to be perfect. Use them to learn that mistakes are part of being human. But some mistakes have consequences that last forever. Court is adjourned. Amber Reeves took a plea deal. She received 3 years in juvenile detention for her role in the robbery and the subsequent kidnapping plot. Marcus Reeves, as an adult with a prior record, received 15 years in federal prison. Rachel Reeves received 25 years for conspiracy to commit murder, kidnapping, and a dozen other charges. The Kensington family filed a civil suit against everyone involved. Sarah's family would be paying restitution for years to come. Stanford rescinded Sarah's admission. Her perfect transcript and perfect test scores and perfect recommendations meant nothing in the face of a criminal record. And Sarah's parents, Michael and Linda Chun, finally started going to therapy. Together and separately, they were beginning the long, painful process of unpacking their grief over Lily, their guilt over her death, and the way they had inadvertently damaged their second daughter in their attempt to prove they could be good parents. On the day Sarah was transferred to the juvenile facility, where she would spend the next 2 years, her mother and father came to say goodbye. We love you, Linda said through tears. We've always loved you. We just didn't know how to show it without making it conditional on your achievements. I know, Sarah said. I think I'm starting to understand why. It doesn't make it okay, but I understand. When you get out, Michael said, we want to try again. Not as parents trying to create a perfect daughter, but as imperfect people trying to be a real family. Is that something you'd want? Sarah thought about it. 2 years was a long time. Anything could happen in 2 years. She might come out of this experience even more damaged than she went in. Or she might come out stronger, with a clearer sense of who she was and what she wanted. Ask me in 2 years, she said finally. I need to figure out who I am first. Without you, without the expectations, without the pressure, then maybe we can figure out how to be a family. Her parents nodded, accepting this. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't complete rejection either. It was honest, which was more than they'd ever had before. As Sarah was led away to begin her sentence, she thought about everything that had happened. The friendship that was never real. The freedom that was actually manipulation. The rebellion that ended in tragedy. The perfect life that was built on lies and trauma and impossible expectations. She thought about Margaret Kensington, whose only crime was making a medical judgment call 20 years ago and who had paid for it with her life. She thought about Lily, the sister she never knew, whose death had cast such a long shadow over everyone's lives. And she thought about herself, Sarah Chun, who had spent 17 years being someone else's dream of perfection, and who would now spend the next 2 years figuring out who she actually was underneath. It wouldn't be easy. It would probably be terrible, but at least it would be real. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth something. 2 years later, Sarah Chun walked out of the juvenile detention facility on a bright spring morning. She was 19 years old, had her GED, and absolutely no idea what came next. Her parents were waiting by their car, older and grayer, but somehow also lighter, like a weight had been lifted from their shoulders. Hi, Sarah said awkwardly. Hi, they both replied. So, Sarah said, You asked me 2 years ago if I wanted to try being a real family. I've had a lot of time to think about it. And her mother's voice was tentative, hopeful. And I think I'm ready to try. Not because I owe you anything, and not because you owe me anything, but because I think we're all different people now. And maybe these different people can figure out how to exist together without destroying each other. Her father smiled, and it reached his eyes for the first time in years. That sounds like a good place to start. They drove home in comfortable silence. Sarah looked out the window at the world passing by and realized something. She wasn't the perfect daughter anymore. She wasn't the rebel who broke all the rules. She wasn't the victim or the criminal or the tragic figure. She was just Sarah, flawed, complicated, still figuring things out, and finally, genuinely free. And that was enough. If you made it to the end, comment freedom and share this video with someone who needs to hear this story. Because perfection is a cage, rebellion without purpose is destruction, and sometimes the only way to find yourself is to lose everything you thought you were supposed to be. This has been Crime Atlas. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more stories that will make you question everything. Until next time, remember, the truth is never as simple as it seems, and the people closest to you might be hiding secrets darker than you can imagine.